Comedy has changed over the decades in media, starting way back in the early 1900s with the first silent films and the Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton era of physical stunts and gags without sound, all the way up until now, the mid-2020s, with people endlessly scrolling on their cellular devices on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and whatever all of the other ones are, trying to find some sliver of comedy left in the world today. And it's really downgraded since the 1950s and the 1960s with people slamming their hand in drawers. Ow! Oh! Okay. Anyway, people in the 1950s and the 1960s, it was a lot more physical humor. Now, if this physical humor wasn't dangerous or anything, people would just be injuring themselves over and ow! Okay. As I was saying, you'd see people injuring themselves over and over again in the 1950s and the 1960s. But what people don't understand is that they'd be back in the next episode, so you'd realize that they're okay. And today, in the mid-2020s, you see people get hit by a car, and there's no next episode to tell you if they're okay. Right, hang on, this is one. Oh! Turn that off. Where's the paper towel? Oh, man. Okay. Paper towel. Anyway, in the 1950s and the 1960s, you'd see people injuring themselves, but they'd always be back in the next episode, and it would be perfectly okay. Oh, my hands be perfectly okay, because they'd be back in the next episode. Oh, my foot. Oh. Okay, I just need to put some pressure on it. Oh. Hey. Oh. Anyway, as I was saying, the people in the comedians in the 1950s and the 1960s would be doing very physical stuff. But now, you have people endlessly on their cell phones trying to find some bit of comedy in a span of 15 seconds because that's how long the videos are, and it's not the same as the good comedians in the 1950s and the 1960s. And people today just don't understand that humor doesn't exist anymore, or it's not as good as it once was in the 1950s and the 1960s. Alright, let me go turn the camera off.
Comedy has indeed changed over the many decades in which it's been in media. And there's something to be said about how the simplistic nature of the 1960s, 1950s television shows, because it's quite interesting. If you go back and watch those television shows, it's refreshing because in every single episode, you have a lesson. You have a life lesson in every single episode. And there's a lot of slapstick humor, physical comedy, and there's no real progressive storyline. You can watch any episode at any time. You don't need to watch every single episode leading up to the episode that you're gonna watch. And there's really something to be said about that. Now that kind of show started to wrap up at the end of the 1960s, and then working your way into the early 70s, you didn't really see very much of these like life lessons in every episode. You still did. You were less concerned with the physical comedy, and now when you're in the 1970s, you're focused more on the character and the character development. Also, color started to become more normalized in these comedy shows, and it stayed this way until the early 2000s. You had more people focusing on the character development and less on the life lessons of the show. And the shows started to become more episodic, and people had to watch a lot of the episodes if they wanted to see the new one because they wouldn't understand most of it. And you were still only watching television. You weren't creating any content. And this actually changed in the early 2000s once people started to get camcorders. Now, camcorders would just record things. It's like a cell phone camera, except it's bigger. It's like a compact video camera, so you could carry it everywhere. And there's something with the style of these that I like so much. It really emphasizes the yellow. But once people got these, comedy started to change again, because now you're creating your own comedy, so you're recording people falling over or whatever, and you're not watching somebody do it. You're not watching a pre-recorded show. You're creating your own show. And this changed the idea of comedy because people were more focused on making their own content. And now that kicked off this chain reaction of people wanting to make their own content. So we now have things like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube Shorts, and honestly just YouTube. YouTube started it off really in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And you had people posting whatever they wanted to. They were using this camcorder, and as technology improved, cameras. They were using these cameras to post what was going on in their life or make a funny skit. And there was no formula to it. It was just people being silly, posting stuff on the new internet. And now it's become this constant cycle of people finding something that's popular and realizing, oh, this is popular, I'm going to recreate it. And it's no longer comedy because everybody's just doing the same thing over and over again. And this is what's wrong with cell phones. And I actually interviewed somebody about this cell phone and how comedy has changed throughout the years. So, just what's your name?
I'm Paige.
You see people all over TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and they just scroll forever. And do you find any of that appealing at all?
I just, okay, the thing is, I do that, and I think everyone kind of does that to an extent, but I think the people where they're on their phones all the time, and it's constantly just referencing stuff from TikTok, from Instagram, even if it's not, something that's seen super often, I think that's kind of just insane. It makes conversations with people feel like they're not even conversations anymore.
Do you ever watch a movie and get bored with the movie?
Oh, all the time.
All the time?
All the time.
Do you think that has anything to do with just scrolling?
Yeah, I think I have a very short attention span, and I think that's really magnified when I'll go to conferences for FFA, and I'll find myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what you're saying anymore. Your words don't even sound like words. They don't make comprehensible sense. My attention span is gone. I have no focus at all.
Yeah. Do you think that's the same for everybody?
I think it's really similar for a lot of people. Except for maybe the kids that honestly don't have phones, like kids that don't have phones, kids that were raised like without TV, like whatever, maybe they're a little funkier socially. However, they do have an attention span that a lot of the general public cannot say that they have.
Do you think you could be without your phone for like a week?
I have been, like, a couple times. And it's always, like, I'll get in trouble and they'll, like, take my phone. But I think it's possible. I think it's very possible.
And just, like, whenever you get your phone taken, are you, like, longing for your phone or Instagram?
Honestly, not really. It feels nice to have, like, a break from having to respond to people.
Yeah, and it's nice to not have a phone.
Yes, because it's work. Like, it's so much work and effort, and I find myself, like, not wanting to respond to people all the time. Like, I'll just have notifications, like, in my messages, or, like, I'll just miss phone calls on purpose. I'm like, I can't do it. I just don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. And do you ever get sent a lot of, like, funny, like, I'm doing air quotes, like, funny Instagram Reels or TikToks, and it's just, like, you have to just keep watching them over and over?
Sometimes. I think my friends send me a lot more of, like, the funny ones where I kind of look at them and I'm like, so is this funny or are you mentally ill? Are we both mentally ill? Maybe.
Right. And so you're not really sure if it's funny. Like, I've seen people getting hit, like, by cars and stuff on Instagram. And no, I mean, I'm that's what I'm trying to figure out.
No, I laugh when I'm uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, like, is that what we find funny now? Do you watch one of those and you laugh at it?
I don't think I can, like, do that to that scale.
Right.
Like, if it's, like, a little kid, like, falling off of something, like, let's just say they fall off of a slide, yeah, that's kind of funny. But if it's, like, another person getting, like, fully killed by a car, no, I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you would have to think, there's a line somewhere where you draw before slamming your hand in a drawer funny, versus somebody just dying.
Yeah.
So as you can see, people today still think that old television shows, or the idea behind them, are funny. And people are kind of fed up with how comedy is today. Then maybe we should go back to the more simplistic era of the 1950s and the 1960s.